Get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Brown University Masters of Science and Technology Leadership webinar. I am the Director, Pete Chomowicz. Today we have a chat with three of our most illustrious alumni from different walks of life. I'm going to read their bios in a second, and then we're going to get started with a conversation. In the audience, we want to hear your questions, your reactions. To do that, use the Q&A button. The chat button is disabled. So let me share my screen and we'll just go over their bios quickly. Oops. Oops, sorry, folks. Okay. Nayurka Quinteros is a digital transformation leader, AI hybrid cloud, and quantum innovator at IBM. An executive enterprise solutions architect with 25 years of experience leading digital transformation across AI, containerization, and hybrid cloud. She specializes in modernizing legacy environments and building global programs through disciplined governance. Passionate about emerging technology, particularly quantum computing. Quantum, she's going to explain to us what a qubit is, if only. Known for building authentic relationships across teams and customers. She brings both strategic vision and practical execution to complex enterprise challenges. Our next alumni is Matt Somerville, is an enterprise account executive at Oracle. Matt is a Navy veteran who served as a flight deck aircraft director aboard the USS Carl Vinson before building a career in enterprise technology sales. Although he won't talk about it, I'd love to hear what it's like to dodge an F-35 on a flight deck. That must have been quite an experience. Also, it used to be at IBM for 10 years. Now at Oracle, Matt has worked at the intersection of large-scale technology, product strategy, and innovation, helping organizations navigate rapid technological change. That's what we're going to be talking about today, and the evolving impact of emerging technologies. And Cliff Baszler is a vice president of analytic consulting at Experian. As vice president of agentic AI. You'll be happy to know, Cliff, that we just added a class this summer to our curriculum on exactly that topic, agentic AI. Love to get you back involved with that. And analytics at Experian, where he helps financial institutions leverage artificial intelligence, advanced analytics, and emerging technologies to drive growth, improve decision-making, and create better customer experiences. With nearly 2 decades of experience in financial services, Cliff has held leadership roles across analytics and credit risk and marketing, product development and innovation at Experian, JP Morgan, PNC Financial, and Bread Financial. All right. So, other than all being incredibly beautiful and brilliant and Brown alumni, you all share something in common. I think we all do these days, AI. So there's much hype. Maybe I shouldn't say it that way. There's much written about AI these days, particularly in the corporate marketplace. Are we headed for an AI apocalypse, or are we in it? Is it overhyped? What does it actually mean? When I work with my students, so I teach, as you know, I teach a course in futurism and in strategy, and every single student cannot imagine a future, a tomorrow, that is not a hyper-fueled AI future. They just can't. And it probably comes from the stories they tell me about their management telling them, integrate AI into your work stream. And what they're telling me is, I don't care how. And I don't even care about the ROI. Just, I want it. I want AI. I want it in there. I want it throughout the company. And we just had a presentation from the Bank of America CEO, Brian Moynihan, who talked about AI and banking, crypto, right? Cybersecurity, how all these technologies are changing everything that you're all doing. Many of you are in the innovation space. So let's go right to Cliff. What's your view of the AI apocalypse? Should I go dig a bunker in my backyard?
I don't think it's an awful idea. But no, AI apocalypse. So if I break that down, like from the very top, what do people mostly mean when they talk AI apocalypse, especially in the realm of this program, right? You've got very ambitious professional people, right? The primary concern obviously is jobs. There's no doubt. I mean, the numbers bear it out. You can look at, your big four consulting company of choice and see, the numbers that they put out around CapEx spend on AI. And I think to your point, if I pull on that thread a little bit, especially 2024 and 2025, there was a lot of AI for the sake of AI, right? I think what you're seeing in market right now is more start with a use case and layer AI on top of it. I think that's much more meaningful for organizations, and I think that's the necessary evolution, right? That said, without all of this capex, does it get to where it's at now? Does it get to where it's going as soon as it could? Probably not. But I think the AI apocalypse is coming. Smarter people than I have said it often, but it's the person that utilizes AI better than you that's going to take your job, right? So I think there is an AI apocalypse coming if you're agnostic to the technology, right? The tooling and just hiring on my team, right? I can tell you from experience, there are critical skills involved with building things in AI. And I work in a very technical space, so I'm more along the agentic realm, where it's even 2 years ago when I was hiring, these were not skills that were heavily considered. We had maybe slightly considered them 4 years ago. They weren't on the map, right? There are transitory skills along those lines where you can build out on it, right? Like if you knew how to code, you can figure out how to build agentic AI, as long as you're a reasonably intelligent person. But those are now absolute requisite top of the list requirements, right? So I think the AI apocalypse is coming for parts of the marketplace and non-adopters for certain. I could talk for the rest of the hour about this, but I need to shut up and let
All right,
everybody else talk.
let's go over to New I mean, Big Blue. When they developed the AI machine that beat Gary Kasparov in chess, right? I mean, this is like then the world I think really said, "Whoa, this is the HAL 9000. Here we go. This is it. This is going to happen." That was
Mhm.
I don't know 30 years ago. So, what's your view? What are you seeing out there as a lead developer at the cutting
Yeah.
edge?
So, there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of everyone just wants to get their hands on some AI, right? And in a way, because of how friendly it is and how easy to use to the average user, a lot of companies have taken, freebies like Microsoft gives you a Copilot if you have any sort of contract, can get, ChatGPT, you can get anything. So it's very accessible. So that's one thing, right? So everyone just uses it to summarize, to do their everyday tasks, which in essence is not really the real value of AI. I think, there is going to be, there have been a lot of changes. There's a lot of positions that have been removed because companies are actually doing it right. They're actually looking, at their workflows. How many people do I really need? If you look at IBM's savings since they started to, we have this story called the Client Zero story, which is our story, and we have I think it's like $3 billion in savings since we started. Just using our own technology to replace something like in HR, right? There's been a lot of chaos because there was a lot of layoffs, but basically any role that was redundant that could have been, perfected with an agent or some sort of workflow, that has happened, right? It's happened already. And as we're moving through the different parts of the different business units, it's the same thing. It's happening. We have Ask IT, Ask HR, Ask everything, and it's all agentic, and it routes everything through the different organizations that it needs to go to. So there have been a lot of, job losses, but at the same time, there have been people who have, been elevated to and promoted to different positions because of what they knew, because of their leadership, and because of, everything that they've been able to learn. So adaptability is the number one thing. Agility, you mentioned it. before when we were chatting, that is, just that's going to be the one thing that's going to save us.
I want to come back to the kind of the different segmentation, demographic segmentation within the corporate world, like starting your career, mid-career, senior executive. I want to come back to that in a minute because the two of you have touched on that. But let's go to Matt. What's your view? Where are we in the AI inflected future, and where do you think it's going?
Yeah, so I'm on the sales side, so I can really only speak to what the market is doing, what I'm seeing our customers doing, and how they're adopting. What I see is every organization has tasked their lines of business to adopt AI, right? Peter, you mentioned that. It's a core responsibility just to stay on top of the cutting edge. But what we're seeing is adoption issues, and we actually performed a study in your class, Peter, the strategic class, around how should my organization, Oracle, and the like, package and offer AI. And what we're finding is, and this is just right now in the moment, in 6 months, 12 months, this may completely be different. But what we're seeing is any solution that has AI built into it is adopted much quicker. The agentic side is a little tougher just because it requires a lot more skills and investment on the customer side. Whereas if the AI tools are packaged into an application, say like a ERP solution, then it's really just plug and play, right? Because it's a black box, all the data is there confined. You layer on a model and you drive results. That said, like I said, the market is ever changing. Oracle as a whole is in a good place right now because we're a data company and AI only operates off data. So our customers are coming to us with use cases. We're working on large, complex projects, and hopefully the ROI will be there, but we're still in the experimental phase with our customers.
It's funny to me that average age of our student in MTL is about roughly 10 years of experience. Some have a little less, some have many more. So mid-career is the way I kind of think of all of you, all of your colleagues. And the whole paradigm of moving up in a company now, to me, to my mind, has been somewhat inverted. Like, when you graduate with an undergraduate degree, you're 22, 23 years old, and you get that entry level job, and it might be related to your degree. Okay, you got a degree in political science or something, maybe not. Maybe you're a STEM professional and you're going to go into engineering. We keep reading more and more about the entry level rungs being kicked out because we don't need to pay an intern, a young graduate, to do these things. But what you're really paying them is to have a future in your company, right? And we have, as you know, there's always a number of lawyers in our group, people that already have advanced degrees that are practicing attorneys. And we were just discussing the other day during graduation how that's the kind of grueling process in law and in lots of fields is, you work those 80 hours reading case law, writing up the briefs, and now Claude or something can do it for you. But what Claude can't do is argue that case in court. Claude can't sign its name to an engineering spec. Claude can't necessarily sign the sales deal. So this relationship of career development and technology, to me, I'd like you all to kind of talk about how do you stay current? It seems to me that at your age right now, you are more indispensable than ever because we're not seeing the pipeline coming up behind you that's developing the expertise. And we don't have the tools at the top end to automate all of these decisions. But yet, Nyark is there working on when quantum and AI converge, there's going to be another tech revolution. So there's always a tech revolution. So how do the three of you stay agile? How did the program help you do that? Did it help you, see life in a different way about embracing the uncertainty of the future? Let's stick with Matt.
Yeah, so great question, Peter. For me, when I was looking to further my education, I was looking for something that was tailored to the tech industry. I come from a finance background. I studied finance in my undergrad, so the MBA was more, I guess, the natural next step. But as we moved along, I progressed in my career in tech. I realized there wasn't really a direct correlation. So when I was looking for a program, MTL was there was a direct correlation to the tech world, and especially being in sales, I'm more the customer facing, but I'm also dealing with a lot of engineering. And to that, that really interests me, right? So I consider myself technical, even though I'm a sales personnel. But I really, out of this class, is really taking a look at the innovation side, the strategy side, the product management side. And so if I can get a grasp around that, that expands my skills within the tech industry to where I have skills that other salespeople don't. And so that sets me apart.
And I think, for people like you that are in sales in our program, I think that's a kind of common thread, which is, if I may paraphrase, you play this translational role. So there's the voice of the customer. This is what I want your products to do. And there has to be somebody that translates that to the engineering team, right? Because you have to have something to sell if you're in sales. So I think having that ability to speak those different languages, to play that, as I say, that translational role, that's a very common attribute we see in the program. How about you, Nyarka? Adaptability.
Yeah, so I am the inverse of Matt. So I've always been on the technical side of things. I was a software engineer for many years. I worked in integration and migrating legacy systems. And my when I found the MTL program, it was it's like it's perfect because I wanted to get somewhat of a business acumen, and I've now gone into sales. I'm part of a sales organization. I'm still highly technical, but that's just because of my background, and I'm able to do some of the translations like you were talking about. But the MTL program combined everything that I couldn't believe it when I found it. I was like, this is even possible because it really had all the leadership. I think that was a big thing for me. It's made me come out of my shell more. It's easy to stay when you're technical. It's easy to stay in the background and do things, and you're building up your technical eminence. That at the same time you're just sitting in the background. I forced myself out of the comfort zone. I aspire to do more, like to be part of research. And I feel that this has given me the tools, the confidence, right? And speaking, the communications class, that was a big deal for me. So I think this program really put together such a great selection of such a great curriculum that the product class, even the analytics class. I mean, all of them they touched upon different areas that have made a significant difference in the way that I interact now. Yeah.
How about you, Cliff? How do you future-proof yourself? And how did the degree maybe hopefully help you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is, right, like I'm on the tech side, I'm on the analytics side, but you've got to stay in touch with the market, like Matt said, right? I'm consistently going out and meeting our customers where they're at. To the point that, a couple people have already made is it's use case based where you're going to drive any value, whether it's AI or the next technological revolution, right? So you've got to find yourself in market. The other thing is, okay, maybe you're in a role and you can't hop on sales calls with your biggest clients, right? How do you do it? And a nice way to augment, even if you are, right? Find podcasts, right? And if you don't know which podcast to go to, I would highly recommend listening to at least two podcasts with regularity. One, where they're going to talk to you about the latest technological advancements, right? Just a blank slate tech podcast that talks about the latest and greatest that's coming out in industry, and then one that's more industry focused. And if you don't know, you might be sitting there thinking which podcast, right? Ask three LLMs and ask them to tell you the best five for each and why, and then combine the answers and make your choice, right? It'll cost you 2 hours a week and 15 minutes of research, and it will get you at least thinking where you can advance things, right? And how can I push these within my organization, within my entrepreneurship idea, that I'm pushing as, a side hustle or a main hustle, right? And I think that'll help you. The program itself, how it helped myself, right, is, I think it's easy to get into as much as you try and look and think horizontally. It's easy to get blinders on within an organization, right? We have people from a diverse types of industries, and to your point earlier, Peter, like diverse disciplines, right? It's several lawyers in the program. It's several military people in the program. We had several people at big tech, big consulting, right? We had entrepreneurs. But what was way more valuable than I thought this would be valuable, but honestly, I was like, it's maybe the second or third on my list, but it is the top, was their perspective, right? We're all facing similar problems. And no, maybe they're not working directly in the financial services industry. But even the fact that they're in a different industry may give them a unique perspective on a similar problem that you're having. And then it's on you to, connect with that group. I mean, Matt and I have a group where we mentor, and I use air quotes on that because I learn a lot from the people that are in our group that we have continuing since we wrapped up classes. We just graduated last weekend. Or 2 weekends ago was amazing, but we've been done with classes for about 6 months now, but we've connected and stayed together. And I like to tell them they're stuck with me now, right? So we stay together. We have this group. It's an open group. We bounce things off each other. Several alumni of the program and current students have joined. And you've got to stay connected and keep thinking, okay, what's the use case I'm solving? How did they solve it 5 years ago? What's the best way to solve it now? And if I had to make a bet, what's the solve 3 years from now, right? Mm-hmm. I think you get out 2-3 years, right? And when you start talking 5 to 10 years, I don't believe much with the way technology is advancing now. But you can place a strategic bet on 24 to 36 months in the future for sure.
So let's just do one more round of quick questions, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. So Cliff just touched on a key aspect of the program, and that's the network. So we've tried to create a program that's the best of both worlds. It's you don't have to quit your job, you don't have to move to Providence, take yourself, out of the career path. But yet you do come to Providence a couple of times in the curriculum to work with each other on classes that you just can't do online. So, and Matt, just before we got on, was texting Cliff saying, "Where the heck are you? We're ready to start." So, Matt, what's particularly somebody with a Navy background, working in teams, what was it like for you to work in such a diverse team? All the students, you work in teams in every class. How did that feel to you, and how do you imagine you're going to take that network with you in the future?
Yeah, yeah. As a sales guy, normally I'm a bit of a lone wolf, so it was definitely a change in my day to day. But as Cliff said, the diversity of knowledge across the cohort really made it impactful. Uh, I think Oracle was the leader in terms of overall employment. I think we had 3 people from Oracle, maybe even 4. I think John Serta joined Oracle about 6 months ago. So there were a few of us, a few IBMers, Googlers. I think there was a Microsoft, and then there was, robotics. And so when we would go through these team projects, I simply didn't have the knowledge, the full context of the solution. Whereas my teammates, they plugged their knowledge in, and then another teammate would plug in their knowledge, and before you know it, we have the answer.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we had to do was set up regular cadence. So for our class projects, you meet every day or every other day, whatever it really takes to get the job done. And just through that natural interaction and coming on campus, which is very exciting, and it makes you more of a team. It felt like a family, especially I think we were lucky, Cliff, in that our cohort, we started off with 16. So we had a really small class and we bonded like a family. And then we gained the other half of the class, which I think was around 40. And it was fun to get them in just because they were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, but they had so much more knowledge that they could bring to the table. And we're like, yes, we need those skills because these classes are coming. So in terms of the network, it's invaluable. I mean, as Cliff was saying, we have chats where one chat is designed just for job opportunities. And so you have 60 people that you can bounce ideas off. Do you have someone at Google that I can talk to? Of course I do, and so on and so forth. So I think that was, like I said, it's an invaluable.
Erica, how about for you, the network?
I was very surprised. I went in, not knowing what to expect, and I've made some friends, experts in different areas, and people who check up on me, right? And it's difficult as we get older and busier with work to find that kind of friendships. So lots of um, different perspectives, people with other degrees, different industries that offer, perspective that sometimes they reach out to me because they want to bounce an idea off of, hey, you're working in this, and I appreciate that greatly. And it came through on my capstone project. I felt supported. I felt at times I was like, oh my God, I don't know that this is going to work. And, I had so much support from my peers from all different areas, all different industries, and that to me is invaluable, very very precious.
That's beautifully said. Let's take some questions from our audience. Emma, does anyone have their hand up?
It looks like we have one question submitted here so far. So if anybody else has some questions, please submit them to the Q&A. And then we do have some pre-submitted questions that I'll ask as well. The first one is it a computer cloud program for Masters of Science in Technology Leadership?
A computer collaborative program?
Computer cloud program.
Oh, no. So it's not, I like to say MTL is little t, big L. So it's really the focus is on developing the leadership skills in the students. And there are some technical courses, but they're not like computer science kind of technical. Yeah.
Thank you. For our alumni, looking back, what opportunities did Brown open that might have been available elsewhere?
Anyone want to take that?
Yeah,
Okay, Matt.
I'll say in my leadership that I see in the day to day, I see advanced degrees. My boss has a MBA from Harvard, my third line, same thing. When I was at IBM, I saw advanced degrees across the board, MIT, Penn. You know, coming to Brown was a big deal and an opportunity that I certainly could not pass up. And through my conversations with my leadership, as I approached the program, as I was in the program, and as I finished the program, they were super encouraging. They were happy. They were excited for me. And I think that will go a long way and will open a lot more doors than I may think. And going back to the networking, there are so many doors that we can all open at a drop of a hat. You just got to ask and you got to take the time to network, be personable, and build those relationships.
I'll just add to Matt, for those that online that don't know, that at school like Brown, yeah, I mean it's great. It's Ivy League, all that. You expect excellence, but there's so many offices of support for the students. There's our Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship that has helped many of our students develop their own businesses. It's a resource open to the whole campus. There are research opportunities. There's the campus itself. There's lifelong career support. We have you're searching for a job, trying to create your online persona. You need advice about career pivoting. We have offices that do that to support our students. So it's not just about, I think, the experience in the program, but it's about life afterwards. And that's really what you, I think, should expect from a school like Brown. Another question, Emma.
What was a challenge that you had to overcome during your time in the program?
I'm going to preempt that and say time management. We know you all had that. So busy professionals, personal lives, something other than time management. Nyurka, you want to take that?
Actually, self-confidence, that was a big deal for me. I felt very secure in my own little world doing the things that I was doing. So I had to overcome a lot of, obstacles, and I was put on the spot, and Barbara's class was, it's like day one, you get in front of everyone, and, you have to speak up, right? So yeah, my capstone project was difficult. It was very, I had to make it smaller in chunks, that everyone could understand. And, quantum computing is not something that's easily understood. So that was, I continued to work on that. So, it was personal growth and opening up to opportunities for me. That was a big challenge. Yeah.
I worked at a huge engineering company, General Dynamics, for many years, and we had a joke: how can you tell an extroverted engineer? She's the one who looks at your shoes when you talk. Another question, Emma.
Is there a specific skill or tool that you wish you studied or practiced before day one of classes?
Hmm.
I can take this.
Okay.
Uh, so I was lucky in that I studied finance in undergrad. You're going to be exposed to a couple finance classes. And what I noticed, there was a population within the cohort, maybe one was a lawyer who took accounting 10 years ago. So there are some topics within finance that become very complex and difficult. And so I would just recommend brushing up on some of those skills.
Yeah, the other thing I would say too is public speaking, right? We can all
Yeah.
use public speaking help. Even the greatest public speakers, right? Talk about how they're always improving. And you'll have access to professors in Barb and Cliff, that, that their class is explicitly public speaking, right? And they can take you, whether you're a D minus, they can take you from a D minus to a C plus. But if you're an A minus, they can take you to an A plus. I mean, they have big time clients all around the world, all across industries and politics. But they can help you no matter where you're at. So I would say level up as much as you can going in, because if you can get yourself to that C minus, they can probably get you into the B range. And then the storytelling as well. So Ruben's class, he works, I believe it's for the Washington Post, and it's storytelling with data. And you talk about AI proof skills, right? To relate back to the AI apocalypse. I promised I could talk an hour, and Peter's going to have to tell me to shut up here. But I think that's a human element that is not going to be replaced by AI, at least in the short term. And he can help you level. I guarantee you, if you pay attention and put the work into that class, he will level up, and that helps you in any role. It doesn't matter if you're sales. It doesn't matter if you're the backest of back end engineers, right? Like, you're going to have to tell stories. You're going to have to tell stories with data, and you're going to have to sell something, even if it's just selling yourself, right? So I think that's what I would work on doing it.
I've come up with an unofficial, don't tell Brown, hasn't like been officially approved, but my tagline for the program is leadership, vision, judgment. Those are the three key things we're after. Those are the outcomes that we're really looking to develop in the student. And you've all spoken about Barbara Tannenbaum. She's been at Brown for, I think, 50 years, 50. She has the most popular class at the undergraduate level. So students wait 2 years to take her course. And when I contact alumni from the program from 10 years ago, they all to a person say the skills they learned in her course were lifelong, right? So, right. So what is to have a vision, to be a leader is to have a vision. It's different than managing. And that vision doesn't mean anything if you don't get people to believe in it. So to persuade people of your vision, right? And then this AI apocalypse, I think, to my mind, is so much wrapped up in judgment. Sure, I can put into Claude or ChatGPT some kind of question, but I need the judgment to evaluate that and to evaluate it in the context of my company, where I'm actually trying to perform. Another question, Emma.
Why did you choose the program at Brown when evaluating different schools?
How about
I can take
Nyurka?
that.
Oh,
Sorry.
all right, Cliff, and then
All
Nyurka.
right. So I had looked at programs for over a decade, honestly, and honestly, I'd be way better off if I had just jumped in the deep end a decade ago. I wish I had, but this program wasn't around, so it wouldn't have hit. But so there's a couple reasons. One, the timeline, right? You can get it done in about a year, right? That was big. Most similar programs are going to run you longer timeline than that. It's an Ivy League program, so there's an amount of excellence assumed in that, and I think the where that shows up for you is going to be in your peer set that you learn from, that we've all talked about, right? Like that's a huge piece. And then the hybrid format, right? So I had looked at online programs. The reality is you can learn skills in online programs, but you're not going to get the network piece unless you're incredibly to the type A end, right? Like all the way type A. Sure, you can probably pick it up, but those on sites really matter. They were really a difference maker, and they weren't burdensome like some of the programs, right? Where it's like, if you're in this program, you likely have your own career going. It might be tough for you to skip out on a Thursday, Friday once a month, or a Friday every other week, like some other programs within this tier are demanding that you do. So the flexibility and the hybrid environment, and then the peer set were really big for me, along with the timeline.
That's great, Cliff. How about you, Nyurka?
For me, it was the curriculum, right? When I looked at what was being offered, and honestly, just looking at that alone, when I got there, we started with a psychology class and then philosophy class, and it was like it just blew my mind. So I didn't want to do something that was just financial. I don't want to do something like an MBA. And I looked, like Cliff said, I looked around many years. I always wanted to go back to grad school. And I once I understood that I really wanted to do something that would put me in a path to work with emerging technology, and in this case in quantum. Everyone in research has, well, not everyone, but most of the people have PhDs. You have to have at least a master's to work there. And I said, okay, I need to find something that's going to give me that edge, right? So if I'm going to apply for something, I need to be able to speak to those people and actually have some sort of credibility. And I couldn't believe when I found the program. But at the same time, it was like a full circle moment, because I did Brown Summer High School as a kid, as a teenager, when I didn't speak the language, and it helped me immensely. And I even went back and took classes my summer year to complete some of my high school requirements, to help me go to a university. And coming back as a graduate student was like it's a full circle for me, and I'm just so grateful for everything the Brown community's been able to do for me. So yeah.
Beautiful. Emma, any other questions?
We have quite a few questions in here, so I'm just going to put out a last call now, while we get through some of these. Would any of you be open to sharing what you did for your critical challenge project?
Anyone?
Yeah, I
CCP?
will.
Yeah. Good.
So mine was a digital sales assistant for a salesperson, and it essentially um, pulling together data points from all different sources, aggregating them, and building an account plan, which is a necessity. It's necessary in what I do, right? You have to understand the customer, a 360 view, and so it was that. Now, if I may, the CCP is really designed to be paired with the Innovation Center. Peter, what was the name of the Innovation Center? I forgot the full
Nelson.
title. The Nelson Center. So as you go through your CCP, you start from scratch, and then you go to a prototype. And the output of the CCP is designed to be presented to maybe a VC or the Nelson Center for seed money. to build your solution, it's also designed to fail, right? You're going to run into roadblocks around your CCP. That's going to make you think different. And that was really I guess, the advantage of it all. While my prototype has been duplicated a million times, I can find them online already because AI is so prevalent. But there are some people in our cohort that have taken it back to their organizations, presented it to their leadership, and their leadership have adopted those policies or the projects. And so it gave them the ability to show what they're bringing out of the program. So it's a very critical piece to your education, and it's a lot of fun. You'll learn so much.
Now, Yorka, you've mentioned the CCP a couple times this afternoon. Would you mind describing what you worked on?
Sure. So my CCP was, democratizing quantum computing and the impact that it would have in developing the workforce for it. So, it is a very complex subject, and therefore there aren't that many people who know what it is or how to even get into it. And right now, right before the call, we were talking about the past pace of technology nowadays, and our own calendars from IBM, a roadmap for quantum fault tolerant computer. It's 2030. Now it's 2029, and every I feel like every quarter there's more and more changes, and the fact to it is that we don't have a skilled workforce to be able to sustain the growth of the technology. So our geopolitical situation is changing. So now we have an influx of, PhD students from other countries who are the lead scientists, but everything is moving to be sovereign. We have, countries talking about their own sovereign technology and so on. So, United States, we need a workforce from scientists to engineering to marketing, salespeople, business development, and everything else in between. So I focus my research on, the existing data, how many students are in the pipeline to, go into these fields at the university level, and then, how many of those are going to be prepared for the workforce. And the reality is that it's very little. It's not enough. So if we need to, for technology to be adopted, it needs to be scalable. You need to have the people that can do the work behind it. So that's a potential, there's a gap there. And it's, I've been able to present it here, and I got a mentor from research. I was offered a job, and it's more than I could possibly anticipate. So and it's just the beginning. I think there's a lot more work to be done there.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Emma, another question?
So the next question in the queue, what are some key knowledge that you learned and that you brought into your professional career that has helped a lot?
I'm going to rephrase that question. What was your favorite class?
Oh.
Are we in trouble if we say they not your class, Peter?
Wait, sorry, bad connection. Can't hear you.
You had a great class. This is a tough question.
So, I mean, yes, we talk a lot about ROI. So when I say favorite, I think you could replace that with, and as this person is asking, what was the course that had the most value to you? One that you really, you use it every day or changed your way of thinking, or
I'll throw in Cliff mentioned earlier the analytics class. You get a license for a Tableau, the Tableau tool, and you build your own reports. You take big, huge data sets and you distill it down into consumable data points. I thought that had a lot of value. It's not something that I've done previously in any of my roles. So being exposed to that and knowing how to do it, it was a lot of fun.
All right, Cliff.
I'd say probably Ruben's class, right? I mean, he gives you, which is the storytelling data class that I had mentioned earlier. I think that's, he does it for a living, right? For a major national newspaper, and you're learning how he graphically represents data to tell a story, right? I mean, I do that for my job. I've done it for almost 2 decades now, right? And was able to sharpen my skills. He'll meet with you offline. That's a big piece. I was never told no, right? Like that's another skill I would sharpen is get unafraid to ask people for help because nobody ever told me no when I asked for help at Brown, and I probably could have asked for even more. And not just on your projects, but I've contacted professors that come from industry. There's a good mix of like there's some pure academia professors, but then there's plenty of professors that come with real high level industry experience. And I've contacted them subsequent to ending the program for career advice at different points, and they've been extremely helpful.
Nayarka?
I'm torn between Sloman's class and Alio's class, the psychology and philosophy, right? I always consider myself a very, rational, reasonable person, but then have all these, different cases and going through them. And I think they're, more than ever now, it's really valuable to understand like decision making, right? How do you make decisions, right? Like it's not a mathematical equation, right? It's not something that an algorithm can do. You have to really take into account everything, like your own, heuristics and everything else, and put aside some of your, your own beliefs to be able to do some of the hard decision making. Those classes where I spent a lot of time, and I still go back to some of those readings. Really, really interesting.
All right. Emma, another question, and then we'll wrap up here. Maybe one more.
We have a couple more in the queue here if you're okay with that, or I can pick the best one yet.
Pick the best one.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone applying to the program?
That was that was the question I always ask all the students, all the alumni. There we go. See, my job here is done. All right. Cliff.
I would say just do it. Just do it. If you're thinking about it, just do it. Right? Like apply, get in the program, make your decision from there. Don't sit on your hands for a decade making a decision like I did. Like take the action now. Whether there's an AI apocalypse coming or not, there is a seismic change in how work is done coming. And you're way better off being a part of that and studying that. And this is honestly a low risk way to dive head first into the deep end there. And you can do big T tech in your CCP. And that's the class that's going to take up the most of your time. And you can do it over a couple semesters as well if you weave it into your other coursework. So I would say just do it. That would be my biggest advice. Don't noodle on.
All right, Cliff, big fan of Nike. Just do it.
That's right.
Matt?
I couldn't have said it any better if I'm being honest with you. When I was researching the program, I had some apprehension about applying. Was I worthy enough? And I just did. I said, why not? And I got in, and it was the best decision I ever made. And I just had to figure it out from there. So there's no time like the present.
And as you've said, you're not figuring it out alone. You got each other, you got your faculty, you got the school. Now, Yurka, you get the final word.
Yes, do it. Think about your future, but also think about your family, right? Like in my case, I have, young two young ladies at home, and they're so proud of me for doing this. I'm a parent. I travel a lot from work, and I work hard. I try to do the best I can at work, and doing this, it was my treat. This has been the treat of a lifetime, and they're so proud, and to hear them talk about what I did, me trying to explain to them what I was doing, it's worth the late nights and everything else. There's no time like the present, and really you get to build the future that you want, so just go for it.
Yeah. And I would also add, if you want questions and you want a transparent view, Peter will tell you, Matt will tell you, I'm an incredibly straightforward, pragmatic person. Like if you do have questions and you don't want to just do it, feel free to reach out to me. find me. LinkedIn is professional network. You can look up my Brown email. I check that from time to time, but send a smoke signal to Columbus, Ohio, the greatest city on earth. But you can ask alumni too. I'm sure Erica and Matt are in the same boat. Like I will give you the good, the bad, and ugly.
Yep.
I appreciate that from all of you. And we know we've got an alumni page on our website. We got a dozen alumni that give of their time. And if anyone online, if you want somebody in a particular industry or particular company, I'll connect you. All our students love the program and they're happy to talk to anybody. Nyarka, Cliff, Matt, thank you all very much for joining us. It's been a great pleasure. Congratulations on your degree, and we'll do this again real soon. And all of you online, thank you for giving us your lunch hour. If you have any questions, you can contact me or our panelists, our alumni here. Take care, everybody. Be well.